Good morning. Today's reading will come from Colossians 1:18 through 20. And Jesus is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning and the firstborn from among the dead, so that in everything he might have the supremacy. For God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether things on earth or things in heaven, by making peace through his blood shed on the cross.
Andrew could have had us doing anything on that song. I was hopeful that it would go well. It did. I'm thinking, no, we could use it like at a time where we have a special collection. You could always use it at that time too. Open your wallet, pull out, you can get the lyrics in your head. I mean, it fits. You could do it and then do all three, and then we pass the trays. So we've got something there. I was waiting for the turnaround. I was thinking that wasn't what we might do, but it's kind of tricky in the pews, yeah. Move everybody to the aisle, though. Verse number 4, move to the aisle. Welcome, so thrilled for those that are here, those that are guests, and it sounds like not guests necessarily. People know who you are, so that really helps. It's fun Sundays like this where it's hard because we know we have a lot of people gone, but yet when you think about the places where we have, as Andrew's already said, so many people out, especially in Honduras. That's a blessing too. But thankful for those that help us backfill a little bit, if you will, this week. And I want to mention too, before I start, it's always fun to share Broderick and Tiffany. I'm going to ask you to stand just so people know who you are. If you'll stand up, and then I'll finish so people will know. They want to be known. They want to be members. Want to be a part of this church family here, and we're thrilled that you are. Yeah. And you can sit down. Yeah, you can go ahead and sit down if you want. And if you want to stand, you can. You're good. You may not know, and you may have met Tiffany before and then met Broderick. You may not know that they're newlyweds too. So, about a month or so? Yeah, so congratulations on that. So I'm so thankful they want to be a part of what we're doing here, and they obviously believe in Jesus, but also believe in what we're doing, and we're so glad to have you be a part of that. Not just the two of you, but then your kids as well. So thank you for letting me share that with the group here. So they're just different things that they want to plug in and be a part of. So I know a lot of you have talked to them and met them, and if you haven't yet, then please do. It's the question, why? Why? It's 3 letters. It's not too long. And it is a very good question. It's a good question, the fact that it's brought cures for diseases. Alexander Fleming, he wondered why some bacteria didn't grow around this mold. And thankfully, the work of him and others in wondering why, it led to what we now know as penicillin. And something we don't think too much about, but something luckily somebody asked why at the right point, and we had that, which just revolutionized medicine at that time and even now. Why? It's a good question. It's a question that has brought about inventions that in turn have made life easier in so many ways. The examples, we could consume our time this morning on that. One I'll mention, his name was Roy Plunkett. He was working on a refrigerant gas for DuPont in New Jersey. And the pressure in the gas bottle dropped, so the bottle was in essence empty, but it still had weight to it, which he thought was strange, and his question was, why? So he cut the bottle open and then found this really white, slippery, waxy substance inside. Well, what happened then was it came to be known later on as Teflon. But he asked why at just the right time, and then we ended up with something that changed the surfaces of so many things, most notably which the cooking industry. Why is a question that brought answers that people thought they may never have. Questions that we can look at now and think, well, yeah, but we know them because somebody asked why. Question, why is the sky blue? And then even later on, why is it blue, but then when we go to outer space, it's black? Why is all of that? Why does a bird fly? Why is that shape and that motion get them airborne. It's the question why. Why does a cut in your skin heal? Or why doesn't it heal? What's going on there that causes that? Why? And all of these and so many things like them because somebody asked, why? Why? So we return to the Gospel of John this morning, as we've been the last few weeks. And why is a question that's being asked this time? John used much of his writing to introduce Jesus, to introduce people to Jesus, and we see this in Jesus' interactions with other people. In John chapter 9 this week, John records Jesus meeting up with a blind man. And this blind man, though, he's the one that has people seeing things much differently. John chapter 9, the blind man has people asking, why? Let's see what's going on. John chapter 9, verse 1. As he went along, he saw a man blind from birth, Jesus. His disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Neither this man nor his parents sinned, said Jesus, but this happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him. As long as it's day, we must do the work of him who sent me. Night is coming when no one can work, and while I'm in the world, I'm the light of the world. After saying this, he spit on the ground, made some mud with the saliva, and put it on the man's eyes. Again, we don't want to panic there. It's medicinal at that time. We can think of it, I like to liken it to a dog licking their wound. When we see that, that's how it's thought of. He made some mud with the saliva and put it on the man's eyes. Go, he told him, and wash in the pool of Siloam. This word means sent. So the man went and washed and came home seeing. His neighbors and those who had formerly seen him begging asked, Isn't this the same man who used to sit and beg? Some claimed that he was. Others said, No, he only looks like him. But he himself insisted, I'm the man. How then were your eyes open, they asked. He replied, The man they called Jesus made some mud, put it on my eyes. He told me to go to Siloam and wash. So I went and washed, and then I could see. Where's this man, they asked him. I don't know, he said. There's this question, why? The question that Jesus' followers were asking, why is this guy blind? And then to drill down a little bit further, who messed up? His parents? Him? An idea at the time, kind of this retribution theology. Bad things happen because somebody's done something bad. And it still carries on today. Call it karma. It's come back around. Whatever you want to call it, that's what they're thinking. So, did he do the wrong thing or his parents do the wrong thing? They knew what was going on, but they didn't know why. They knew he's blind, but they don't know why. And we ask the same questions. Why did that car wreck have to happen? Why did it have to happen then in that way with those people? Why did that disaster strike there? Why did it strike here? Why did her husband have to die? Why now? Why was that baby born with that condition? Why did my factory close? Why did the office close at that point? Why did they downsize at this moment? Why? 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 Some will say, don't question God. These people did, though, and notice fire didn't fall from heaven. What did happen? Well, they were given an answer. In verses 2 and 3. So as he went along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he's born blind? Neither this man nor his parents sinned, said Jesus, but this happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him. John lets us know about Jesus meeting a blind man. John's been doing that. He's introducing us to the people who met Jesus, and we're learning things, all kinds of things that can be learned. But we're meeting this blind man so we can learn what these people learned, learn what the blind man learned. Jesus wants you to know you won't always know. Jesus wants you to know you won't always know. Why do some things happen? God may have something to show, but we don't know what. You won't always know how long. The man's eyes, they couldn't see from day one. Would it always be that way? Would he eventually come around with something he didn't know? We don't always know how long. You won't always know when. Did the man wake up that morning not seeing the sun rise, but then knowing he would see the sun set? We don't always know when. And you won't always know why. Although sometimes you might find out. A glimpse is given here, especially the disciples, of what's going on. But we're not always privy to that. We don't always know the why. In verses 13 through 34, this man's called before the religious leaders to defend the fact that he could now see. I mean, the poor guy, from the time he could see, people are just peppering him with, you're not the same guy. I'm the guy. What happened to you? It was this guy named Jesus. No, that's not what happened. It's now he's before the religious leaders answering questions. Questions why he could see, talking about this mud-eye treatment that he gets from the teacher. He's having to defend all of this. His parents were even brought in. They're going to pose some questions, some why questions to them, especially about Jesus. His parents, they're afraid of answering those questions to these leaders, so they said, ask our son. You just talk to him. So the leaders hated his answers, and they threw him out. Not listening anymore, this, get out. But now, this now seeing man meets Jesus again. Verse 35. Jesus heard that they had thrown him out, and when he found him, he said, do you believe in the Son of Man? Who is he, sir? The man asked. Tell me so that I may believe in him. Jesus said, you've now seen him. You've now seen him. In fact, he's the one speaking with you. And the man said, Lord, I believe. And he worshiped him. This man was born blind, and why? Jesus said so God's work could be seen. And that helps us a little bit, but yet it raises even more questions. Now the neighbors and the religious leaders and the man, they all had a chance to see, to really see, or to stay blind. This man could now see Jesus, and then his eyes also work too. But there's still questions, aren't there? All of those years with no sight, however many years it was, for this moment, well, all that he had to go through at that time for this one moment in time, will he always be able to see? Well, we just don't know his story. As it continued, did it go on? It was good for a few years, and then it started to get a little bit foggy again. Was he finally blind by? We don't know. What about the other blind people in the area? What about the other people in the crowd who struggled with their vision? Those that would hear the stories that night or in the coming weeks who weren't healed? Jesus wants you to know you won't always know. You won't always know. Maybe what you're going through is happening so you can see God more clearly. Maybe what you're going through is happening so you can see what He's capable of. It could be that maybe what you're going through is happening so others can see God more clearly. We're still talking about this blind man today. This has just continued to go on and teach because of one man's affliction. Maybe what you're going through is happening so others can see what He's capable of. What we do know with absolute certainty is we won't always know. Jesus wants us to know we won't always know. But even with all of the answers, even without all of the answers, what is our response to be? When we know, when we don't know, when we know a little bit, when we don't know all of the whys, Look at verse 38. What was the man's response in all of this? It's 4 words as we have it in verse 38. And he worshiped him. The man worshiped Jesus. Who do you know who is looking for answers from God? Who is it in your life right now, or as you think back in the past, like I wish I'd known this story then? They're looking for answers from God. They want to know why. Why this? Why now? Why here? Why them? Why me? Tell them about John. John introduces them to people, introduces these people to other people who in turn are introduced to Jesus, and they find out what he has to teach. And in this case, he teaches, we don't always know. It's in chapter 9 that the person that you know may be able to find out that the things going on for years, that no one may know why. Is there comfort in that? Sometimes there is. When that answer's from heaven, we just don't always know why. But in that, Jesus wants you to know you won't always know. And whether we know or not, we worship. Whether we know why or not, we worship. You see, worship is based not on our answer to why, but on our answer to who. Worship's not based on knowing the why, it's about knowing who. And the who is God. The who is Jesus. That's why we can worship, even when we don't know why. Next, it's a lesson in punctuation. As we continue to see these people that Jesus met, thanks to John. And really nothing makes us ask why as much as death. With sickness, you can hold out for a cure. Maybe somebody will find something. Maybe somebody will think, let's try this, and things will get better. We can hold out for that. With a job loss, you can hold out for another one. The right time, the right people, the right tweaks on the resume, something will come up. With the car accident, we can hold out for the body shop. They'll call and they'll say it's done. It's all taken care of. But when someone dies, you may not know if you even can hold on. John wants us to meet a family that met Jesus. Up to now, we've met individuals that are meeting him. Now we meet a family who meets Jesus. The family is very special to Jesus. It seems that they have that kind of relationship where you don't even need to call when you show up. You've got people like that in your life. There's some people you need to call and let them know that you're in town or that you're coming over. There's other people you can just show up, knock on the door. Maybe you can just come on in. That's just the kind of relationship it is. And that's the way it is with Jesus and this family. In fact, in one verse, it simply says Jesus loved these folks. But then something bad happened. It started as a sickness, and we'll read. Chapter 11. We'll start at the beginning. John chapter 11. Now a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. This Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. So the sister sent word to Jesus, "Lord, the one you love is sick." When he heard this, Jesus said, "This sickness will not end in death. No, it's for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it." Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was 2 more days, and then he said to his disciples, "Let's go back to Judea." And make note too in verse 4, we don't always know why. There it is again. We don't always know why. On earth, we don't always know the purposes of heaven. So Jesus and his disciples, it's those that he's teaching God's ways to, they converse in the next several verses. I want us to continue with this family down in verse 17. On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed home. "Lord," Martha said to Jesus, "if you'd been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha answered, "I know he'll rise again in the resurrection at the last day." Jesus said to her, I'm the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die, and whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, she replied, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God who is to come into the world. After she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside. The teacher's here, she said, and he's asking for you. When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now, Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who had been with Mary in the house, comforting her, noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, when Jesus saw her weeping, the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Where have you laid him? He asked. Come and see the Lord, they replied. And Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, see how he loved him? But some of them said, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man kept this man from dying? There's a verse, somebody read verse 32. Did you? Yeah, I know you caught that. I heard you. Verse 32. Somebody have verse 32? You read it. You get that, Warren?
When Mary reached the place that Jesus wanted to stone him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Yeah, you would not. That didn't make the transfer in here. Thanks, Warren. Poor Martha. Martha wants to be confident, and Jesus wants to preach. Trying to stay hopeful, but hoping Jesus will be helpful. Praising God, but missing her brother. And then Mary calls it like she saw it. Lord, if you'd been here, my brother wouldn't have died. If you'd just been here, Jesus, this wouldn't have happened. And then Jesus starts gearing up for a family reunion. Jesus, once more, deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. Take away the stone, he said. But Lord, said Martha, the sister of the dead man, by this time there's a bad odor, for he's been there for 4 days. And Jesus said, did I not tell you that if you believe, you'll see the glory of God? So they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me. When he had said this, Jesus called out in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out. His hands and feet were wrapped with strips of linen around and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. This family meets Jesus. And what can we learn? John wants you to know that Jesus makes death a comma, not a period. It's a lesson in punctuation. Jesus makes death a comma, not a period. They saw it as a period. Jesus has power over death. We know it at the end of the story. We're going to see it in a couple of weeks. But he shows it here to a family. And we get a glimpse of it, of what he's able to do and what he will do a little bit later on. He makes it a comma, not a period. Death doesn't make everything stop. It actually lets life go on. The ladies showed us a little bit. They kind of had an idea of that. It's not the end of the sentence. It's actually a continuation of it. This family met Jesus, and they were shown who packs the bigger punch. And it's Jesus, not death. In Jesus' own words, I'm the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? The thought of death can keep people from having life. It was true in John's time, it's true in our time. This nagging idea of death can keep from having life up here. This family knew of Jesus, but they also learned that he's the one that can make death a comma, not a period. When you know of a family or a person faced with what we know is inevitable, that this life won't go on, that's not a surprise to anyone, do they know about Jesus? Do they know about this story about Jesus? Will you be ready to tell them? You may not have to take them there. You may just be able to relay part of the story as best as you can remember it. The idea of the fact that Jesus brought somebody back to life. And he's there to teach that death is just a comma, not a period. And go to John chapter 11, and there it is. Make note of that somewhere in your Bible, what Jesus teaches about death. Thank you, John. Thank you for writing. All these things and more that we learn because Jesus meets up with these people. This week we learned Jesus wants to know. We won't always know. We'd love it if we did know, if we could just know a little bit more. I think of the bigger book, Job, kind of shows us we just don't always know why. And even when God does answer, even then we have more questions and we're left with, we don't know the whys of those. But even so, we learn from the man who could see and from the man who wasn't blind anymore that we worship. Because it's not based on knowing why, it's based on knowing who. Jesus. We also learn that Jesus makes death a comma, not a period. It doesn't end. Things actually go on. That takes the power out of funeral homes, takes the power out of what hospitals can hold, takes the power out of unemployment lines and those other times in life that things are not going good. And it puts hope in places where hope seems to have vanished. It puts comfort in places where people say there's no more hope. No, in Jesus there's hope. The last 4 words of verse 26. Do you believe this? Do you believe this? Jesus' question is the same to us this morning. Do you believe this? Do you? Next week, 2 more people. First one, he's out there. Number 2, and it's yours. We'll talk a little bit more about those next week as John continues to introduce us to Jesus. I pray that you do know Jesus. Warren's already said it. I pray that today would be a day you decide to follow Jesus, either for the first time or you decided, I haven't been following, I haven't had that faith in Him like I should have, that today will be the day to follow Jesus, to worship Jesus. We'll stand and sing again together. Jesus,